Hello and welcome again to another video from the Marketing Study Guide. In this video, I'm going to have a look at the 9 different branding metrics for measuring share of hearts. My name is Jeff and I'm a long-term marketing lecturer and practitioner. Okay, very quickly, what is share of hearts? So I've got some points there. You're probably very familiar with market share, where we're measuring the share of sales or revenue we have in the marketplace. So obviously the higher the better. And that gives us a good insight into how consumers actually behave and how they action purchases in the marketplace. Whereas share of hearts is looking at the brand's likability, its appeal, its emotional connection, the attitudes, etc. So there's a whole bunch of ways we're going to look at it. You'll see the difference. And what we're trying to do is give an insight into our overall brand health, and basically how consumers feel about the brand and how strongly connected to the brand they are. And we would do this because it's going to help us guide the future. So the stronger we can create this in most industries, that will lead to greater loyalty, greater sales, greater profitability. And it's typically a leading indicator. So we can measure changes in likability and appeal and loyalty, etc. And that is probably going to play out in the future. So if we can identify things that are improving, which is good, and identify any sort of downturns in our brand, that is something we can correct, and hopefully it will not have a financial impact. So let's jump into it. Let's have a look at the 9 approaches. Okay, I've listed them here very quickly. I'm just going to work through them one by one. First one is a brand likability score, and in different countries, companies or research companies will provide this. Probably the most well-known one in America is a company called Q Scores, and I've got the web address there, and this is straight from their website. So it's on italics, so it's the recognized industry standard. They're measuring consumer appeal, and they look at people, personalities, celebrities, characters, such as you might have a packaging like Mickey Mouse or something, licensed properties, programs, events, brands, etc. And I've just got a little summary, a snippet from their example, again from their website. Now, they are capturing survey information. So they're going out and asking consumers. And in this case, for brands, they go through and list the various brands. And in the yellow there, you've got an overall score. So the higher the score, the more likability. And they go through, and what they do is they offer a series of questions. I've only got a limited selection there. There's more questions. And it makes me happy, leader in the field, high quality, good value, etc. And they use a series of those questions and then say, okay, on our scoring mechanism, our algorithm is scoring 50, 41, etc. As shown there. And obviously, if you're a subscriber or willing to pay money to this business, you can look at your own brands or your own industry, etc. So that's overall likability from a consumer survey perspective. The second thing is where we sit in the brand consideration set. Now in the blue here, I've got a typical brand set model. There's all brands in a category, and then the brands we know about, the ones we don't know about. Okay, in any category, there's going to be lots of brands we don't hear of. Okay, and we make our choice typically from the brands we're aware of. And then up here, we've got 3 categories where we classify brands. We don't use these names, but we do put them brands into these categories. So evoked, sometimes called the consideration set, positive, they're the ones we would normally choose from. So we walk into a supermarket, see the brand A, B, or C, and we always choose from that brand set. If we're going to want some fast food, it's McDonald's, Burger King, KFC. They're the 3 we normally go to. It doesn't have to be 3, it can be 2, it can be 5, but they're the ones we go to. Inert means indifference, emotionless. So we've heard of that brand, but we don't know much about it. We're fairly indifferent towards it. And inept is a brand that is negative. We've either heard about bad things or we've had a prior experience and we weren't happy, dissatisfied, and we would never buy that brand. So the question then becomes to the consumer, which brands or what a product category it is, fast foods, etc., would you consider buying in the next month? So it's a future direction. It's an intention to purchase, but it also works out which brands sit in here. Okay, so that's very important. Unless our brand is in that positive, evoked consideration set, our market sales are going to be quite small. Okay, so again, we're tracking these over time. So as that number goes up, that's good. That number goes down, we've got some work to do. Okay, the next one is willingness to recommend question. You probably know this now because of the Net Promoter Score. The Net Promoter Score will use the same question, but this is a metric or a survey question that was around prior to the invention of the Net Promoter Score in the early 2000s. And again, it just uses the scale of 0 to 10. Would you recommend the brand? So it's the same question. And the difference is we instead of having one score for the Net Promoter Score, we've got series of scores. So this is the number of people who responded to each number, and then we've got a percentage. And then we can, instead of looking at one score, we then look at, okay, obviously we've got a segment of people at the top here that are very positive. Then we've got a neutral type group, and then we've got a very negative group. So we're going to have a look at different segments of customers, and we're asking this of customers. So they've dealt with this. So this is helpful information for us. Okay, so building off that is obviously the Net Promoter Score, which most of you would be familiar with. There's the rough calculation there, so exact calculation, so the same numbers. And 9s and 10s score a 1, so we take the 15% across, we take the 10% across. 7s and 8s were considered to be neutral, indifferent, so they score nothing. And 6 and below is considered to be a negative influence and unlikely to recommend you or to discourage others. So they get a negative score. So 15 becomes minus 15, 18 becomes minus 18, and we just add those up. In this case, it's a negative score, which is not good. This Net Promoter Score can go from 100% to minus 100%. So anything below 0 is not good. And typically we consider this in conjunction to our competitors. Okay, but it's just related to the prior one, but it gives us a single indicator. Okay, number 5 is number of recommendations. Now, the problem with the last two, willingness to recommend and Net Promoter Score, is they're theoretical. What I mean by that is you're not asking, do you ever recommend? Do you do online reviews? As you know, from probably the people you mix with, some people love to jump on and do reviews and comment on social media and like posts and share posts, etc. And there are other people that just do not do that at all. So it is pointless to some degree asking willingness to recommend and Net Promoter Score of indifferent people. Okay, so because they're never going to really trigger a recommendation. So this becomes a survey question of how many people. So this is a historical question. So it's not an intentional question of what we're doing in the future. It is, what have you done? So, the last year, last month, it doesn't matter. How many people have you mentioned our brand to, have recommended our brand? So this will get down to how active they are and are they willing. So it sort of includes the willingness. Somebody who says no, which means no, 0, they're not willing to recommend, and they obviously would have score no as low, a negative in the Net Promoter Score. But in reality, they're indifferent. They actually should be a 0 because they're not doing anything. We want to measure the percentage of people who are saying that they are. So obviously the number doesn't matter, but if we survey 100 people and 20% said, yeah, I've talked to 5 people on average, and the next time we do the survey, it's 30% of people who talk to 10 people on average. That is a good trend. Obviously the opposite way, not as good. Okay, customer satisfaction, a very common score. Again, it's a survey thing where we ask people on a scale of 1 to 5 or a different scale, 1 to 7 perhaps, how satisfied they are. And I've got some firm A and firm B there, and there's 1,000 people, and obviously they have to be customer and of the business already, so they're not a consumer that actually deal with this. And then we put together an overall score. So the way it's working here, is there's two scores provided. The average, so the average is 3.5. So as you can see, I've just weighted these, added them all up, divided by the number of respondents, and the average is in this 3.5 firm A, and it's a little bit lower, 3.2 firm B. Or the other way of scoring customer satisfaction is to look at the top two boxes. So what proportion are satisfied or very satisfied? In this case, 60% sit up here, 600 out of 100, and here they've got 650, so 65%. Okay, so two different approaches, but again, it's a fairly helpful thing, but we're marrying expectations to performance. Number 7, very important, is intention to rebuy. So it's a great leading indicator. So the question is something like, how likely are you to buy this? So again, we're assuming they're a customer. We've probably identified that in the survey. And it's obviously a product you buy on a regular basis. And obviously, again, we're tracking this over time. So the higher the percentage, the better. But this is actually talking about behavior rather than emotion, but we're connecting it back. Obviously, somebody who's willing to rebuy is going to be very positive about that. Number 8 is some sort of sentiment or complaint measurement. So there's two ways of doing it. If we have a company that captures complaints either as email or some sort of online way of doing that, or maybe we're a business to business and we actually get written complaints from customers. So internally, we just simply measure the percentage of complaints versus our number of customers, or the number of complaints versus sales, and work out, 95% of sales went through fine and 5% had a complaint. Obviously, that we trend that over time, and the smaller the better in terms of complaints. If we don't have that capacity, we can take it external and do some sort of social media sentiment scoring, and there's various softwares that allow us to do that. So how we're trending in terms of positive, negative, neutral sentiment coming out in social media comments and posts. And then finally, the last one we can look at is the willingness to people to switch. Okay, so this is a really good thing of a measure of loyalty. So the question is something: if you went to the shop and you wanted to buy brand X and it wasn't there, what do you do? Okay, and the choices are, well, I'll shop around, I'll go somewhere else, visit another store, I'll come back in a few days when it's back in stock, I'll tell the shop if it's like a shopping type thing, not a supermarket, can I put that in order, put my name down, can you call me when it comes in, or do I switch? Okay, so again, for convenience products we buy from a supermarket, most likely we're going to switch. However, beyond that, we want to see brands where consumers are very loyal, okay, and they're willing to wait, and they're not even going to consider another brand. Okay, so that's the summary of all 9. Okay, so we would track these over time. Very important that we're just not looking at one-off measures. We're looking to a trend, so how it moves over time. We are also trying to construct some sort of interrelationship between these measures and our sales, revenue, market shares, etc. So we're trying to build some sort of leading indicator or some sort of marketing model that we can rely upon, so we know how these things move and how that actually impacts the bottom line. And that becomes very powerful from an analytics and marketing metrics perspective, and it gives a lot of substance to marketing actions and why we're working on some of these things. So sometimes senior management will go, well, why is this important, or why is attitude important, or why does it matter, any sales matter? If we can demonstrate a clear connection, then we can justify a lot of expenditure in brand building and brand health. Obviously, we're tracking against things we do in the marketplace. So each time we bring in new products or pricing changes or retailer changes or whatever our marketing exchanges are. And of course, the other factor is going to be competitors. Which competitors impact our brand and our sales, and what are they doing that's doing that? Okay, so hopefully, choice there. Reality is we would use several of these, not necessarily one, and to track our likability and appeal over time, and this should improve our marketing performance if we rely on these and connect it to financial outcomes. So hopefully that was a helpful video for you. Please subscribe to the channel and please check out my other videos.